Welcome back, viewer. I'm so glad to see you. My name is Andrew the Automaton, and I'll be narrating today's answers. Throughout the centuries, several churches claimed that they have the original holy foreskin from Jesus Christ, even several at the same time. What are some NSFW history facts that don't get taught in school? French President Felix IV went out via death by blowjob from a mistress. President Lyndon Johnson was obsessed with his dick and loved to show it to people. He called it jumbo. 12-year-old Pocahontas used to entertain white colonists with nude cartwheels. This is actually one of the few things we know about her that's indisputable. The father of microbiology, Antony van Leeuwenhoek, was the first to examine semen under a microscope immediately after ejaculating in his wife. Alexander the Great had 361 concubines, official prostitutes. 4 more and he would have one for every day of the year. Greeks were heavily into sodomy on both sexes. Women were only required to be virgins vaginally prior to marriage, every other orifice was fair game. Catherine the Great had a parlor room filled with explicit, erotic furniture she commissioned personally. We're talking blowjobs carved into chairs, an end table where giant dicks torrential cum shots were holding up a marble countertop, a woman getting eaten out by a demon on a throne. Homegirl had taste. There was a Greek general who was supposed to lead a major expedition to Sicily. The night before he left he got wasted and walked around Athens with his other drunk friends and knocked all of the penises off of the statues in Athens. This caused him to be arrested, he missed the expedition, and they lost almost all of the men they sent to Sicily because only he knew the plan well enough to pull it off. During the Age of Sail, anytime a large ship would come into port, the men often wouldn't be allowed shore leave for a few days. So you would see small boats packed with prostitutes heading out to the ship at mooring. Larger ships of the line would have over 500 men aboard, so there could definitely be a couple hundred ladies brought aboard behind the captain's back. And with virtually no privacy aboard, you would have spaces in the ship with hundreds of couples going at it at once. There were definitely a lot of captains that didn't allow any women aboard, so the sailors on those ships would just have to wait until they could go ashore. If you look up Edward Russell in history books or even Wikipedia, you learn about his military service, including Admiral of the Royal Fleet for some famous battles. What they don't teach is that he threw a party so epic it's still being talked about 300 years later. In 1694, he threw a party for officers and with 6,000 guests coming, wanted to make it special. So, he made the world's largest cocktail. Drained the garden fountain and used that as a giant punch bowl with hundreds of gallons of liquor, over a half-ton of sugar, thousands of lemons, etc. He hired bartenders to paddle around in boats, scoop it up, and serve it to attendees. At some point, it began to rain, so they put a tent up over the fountain to prevent it getting watered down. About a week after they started, they had drank every last drop, the fountain was dry, and the party was over. Anne Frank's diary talked a lot about masturbation, but most of it was edited out. Here is an excerpt of such a part of the diary. Until I was 11 or 12, I didn't realize there was a second set of labia on the inside, since you couldn't see them. What's even funnier is that I thought urine came out of the clitoris. When you're standing up, all you see from the front is hair. Between your legs there are 2 soft, cushiony things, also covered with hair, which press together when you're standing, so you can't see what's inside. They separate when you sit down and they're very red and quite fleshy on the inside. In the upper part, between the outer labia, there's a fold of skin that, on second thought, looks like a kind of blister. That's the clitoris. The first person who was sentenced to the electric chair died horribly. Someone forgot to wet an essential part of the machine, and he ended up with bubbling skin, melting eyes and a foaming mouth among other things. The amount of electricity was so strong that he began to convulse violently, so much so that he weakened straps. He twitched so erratically that his index finger dug through the palm of his hand. The entire room smelled of burning flesh, and the stench even permeated some clothes. Many people who came to see had fainted during the execution. But do you know what's even more horrible? They heard him wheezing after they turned the electricity off. The German army was given methamphetamines during their invasion of France, Belgium, and the Netherlands in 1940. This was the other part of Blitzkrieg that isn't really talked about. For the first 3 days the German army advanced without rest. No stopping or sleeping for 3 days straight. If you got tired they just gave you more meth. The drug may have also played a role in why the panzer divisions refused to stop even after being ordered several times by high command. They only finally stopped advancing when Hitler personally ordered the halt. Jenny Wade was a prostitute and a madam. She wasn't a kind and generous soul who was treating the wounded from both sides of the Battle of Gettysburg. She was offering her services to both sides. When you take the bus tour with recorded audio, the storyteller narrating the tour is supposed to be an old-timer reflecting on the battle. When you pass the Jenny Wade house, still standing, he says something like, "That's the Jenny Wade house. Jenny was a friend of mine, she was a friend to many." I always liked that subtle nod. Newton was so dedicated to his work and abhorred fun, so much that many people believe he died a virgin at 87 years old. And by work I don't mean revolutionizing physics and inventing calculus, I mean alchemy. His main focus was turning lead into gold and making the philosopher's stone. According to Christianity, Jesus ascended to heaven. Hence you might think that, according to Christianity, no body part of him should be found on earth. However, this does not include Jesus's foreskin. As Jesus was, and born as, Jewish, he was circumcised 8 days after birth. Hence, when Jesus, supposedly, ascended to heaven, his foreskin, known as the holy prepuce or the holy foreskin, remained on earth. Throughout the centuries, several churches claimed that they have the original holy foreskin, even several at the same time. 1. The creator of the vibrator was George Taylor. It was originally made as a steam-powered device that was used to cure a disease called hysteria by massaging the pelvic region. 2. Empress Wu Zetian of China asserted her dominance over male officials by making them kneel before her and pleasure her orally. 3. For a long time royal European women gave birth in front of spectators who would pour into the bedchambers to watch the babies arrive. 4. Plymouth colony of British North America, New England, convicted and hung a young man committing bestiality. It was one of the first hangings in the New World. The 16-year-old Thomas Granger was hanged to death for indulging in buggery with a mare, a cow, 2 goats, many sheep, 2 calves, an ostrich, allegedly, and a turkey as mentioned in the court report from 1642. His hangman was one John Holmes. 5. Nelson Rockefeller, former vice president of USA, suffered a heart attack and died while having sex with his 25-year-old assistant. He was 70. Okay, man, wow. So the entire life of Julie de Bigny never gets discussed, but it's ducking fascinating. The fact that Lord Byron gets talked about as a playa, but she doesn't, is a damn dirty shame, but the existence of such a woman shows us a lot about the era she lived in. Julie de Bigny was the daughter of the French king's master of the horse, basically, cavalry commander managed the royal stables. As such, she was trained in horsemanship and swordsmanship as a child, arts at which she greatly excelled. After she got caught canoodling with a minor and other courtier, her dad married her off to some older minor noble, hoping that would quell the scandal. Well, Julie de Bigny was not one to simply do what good girls do, so, finding marriage with a somewhat nobody kind of dull, she ran off with her boyfriend. They toured France, going from inn to inn, doing singing and exhibition sword fighting shows, riding on horseback to go from place to place. Well, eventually Julie got bored of her man, so she ran off with her girlfriend, the daughter of a nobleman. Now, when he did find out about the affair, this nobleman did what you do with disgraced daughters at the time, ship her out to a convent and try to make her forgotten. That is when Julie took matters into her own hands and joined the convent to have hot, illicit, sexy lesbian nun sex. They left the convent by the only logical route: burning the place down and faking their own death. This, understandably, freaked the lover out a bit, who ran back to her family. The dad of Julie condemned in absentia for kidnapping. Now, remember how I said Julie used to tour France singing? Well, this comes in handy for her now, because Louis XIV, King of France, decides to pardon her and offer her a career at the opera. She'd continue her canoodling ways, having many lovers, both men and women. One evening, she even got into 3 duels against noblemen whose wives she had seduced, and even though they attacked her simultaneously, she defeated them all. She died of unknown reasons at age 33. Her gravesite is, to this day, unknown. A life like this, so scandalous, seems unlikely, but is very much the product of the era. The French king of the time was trying to separate himself from church influence, so to have a lady whose lifestyle was so controversial and unacceptable to religious institutions is basically proof that the king was willing to overlook such things if a performer of good caliber could help promote the prestige of his court. Pretty damn cool, and overall a hilarious tale.
Like and subscribe for more funny, interesting, and scary r/ask Reddit videos.